Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm your host, Trudy Rankin. And today I have got Ilana Wechsler with me. And I had to just stop and think about that name, their last name, because I had to ask her how to pronounce it, because in my head it's Wechsler, but it's pronounced Wechsler. Ilana Wechsler from Teach Traffic. Now, the first time that I ever saw Ilana was at a conference, and I saw her speaking at, well, and I'm just trying to remember which one it was. It was either the Digital Marketing Australia conference in Melbourne, or it was with James Schramko's conference. And I'll get her to confirm which one it was in a sec. But she was talking about this really, really interesting puzzle framework as a way of thinking about ads. And it just stuck in my mind because it made so much sense to me at the time. And I found out later that she also has a digital agency, Green Arrow Digital Agency, so where she helps people with ads. And as you do often, you'll go to a conference, you listen, somebody amazing says something, you think, oh, that's really great. And then, of course, I didn't take any action of any kind. But I realized as time passed that Ilana kept popping up in podcasts, like especially on James Schramko's podcast, and I'd get another snippet of really good wisdom and things like that. And so when the time was right, I heard about her $10 remarketing challenge. And so I thought, I'm ready for this. Now I am actually ready for this. And so I jumped on, I did a remarketing challenge, learned a ton about remarketing and using ads for remarketing. And then I did what I still think has been one of the best moves that I've ever did. I basically joined her Teach Traffic membership. And it's been really, really interesting. I've learned a ton. I've experimented a ton, and I still have a lot to learn. But we talk about ads, we talk about how to set them up, how to optimize them, but we've started to move beyond that, and we've started talking about how to actually optimize your funnel as well. And so I thought I would really like Ilana to come onto the podcast and just share some of her wisdom with you. So Ilana, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So just thinking back to that conference, do you remember which conference it was?
I don't know, because I spoke at both. So I don't know, because I don't think you came up to me at the conference.
No, too shy.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you shouldn't be. Yeah, so I was at both, so I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, so it just made tons of sense to me. So could you just share with our listeners just a little bit about your background and how you got to the stage in your life where you have a boutique digital agency and you actually have this really, really useful and helpful group of people that you work with to help them improve their ads?
Yeah, sure. I will give you the short version because there is a long version. Essentially, I'm not one of those people, or those classic kind of internet entrepreneurs that hated their job or whatever. So I used to work as a data analyst in the finance industry, and contrary to what you hear, I actually was someone who loved my job. I used to work with for fund managers with really, really smart people, and every day was different. And so I really enjoyed my job and had no intention of leaving or changing careers until I had my first child. And I quickly discovered that parenting and familyhood and corporate life are like oil and water and don't mix. And so, yeah, for me, like going back to full-time work, I just couldn't bear the thought of leaving my newborn son. And I tried to explore part-time, but that kind of wasn't an option. So I just literally took the plunge, but mainly because I felt like I had no other choice. I think it would be really different now if I was foregoing a career and starting out on my own. But for me, kind of the choice was taken away from me, and no regrets at all. And it was upsetting at the time, but hey, family first, right? And so I just launched myself into the internet world. Like my dream was to work from home so I could manage my son and an internet business. And so sparked a really long journey actually of going nowhere in the beginning. Like I spent years and years just trying to understand the industry. I built content sites. As I said, I'll spare you the long and boring journey. But after a much process of discovering different things, I discovered paid traffic. And as soon as I discovered paid traffic, I thought, oh my God, this is my home. This speaks my love language of data. And I just was fascinated by it. I don't know, I just found it really, really fascinating. And so I thought, I just only want to do this. So I sought advice from a bunch of different people, and they said, you should start an agency, do agency work. But I only wanted to do paid traffic. So I just started a paid traffic agency. I'd love to say it was a strategic decision. It wasn't. It's just because that's all I wanted to do. And it was literally just Google ads for businesses. And yeah, it ended up being a very strategic decision because it became very specialized and it grew really beyond my wildest expectations, to be honest. And these were wonderful problems to have, but I had clients all over the world. But what I ended up, it's one of those things that you start to create with the intention of, I'll do this for now and see what happens. And then 7 years later, you're still doing it. And suddenly I'm on calls at 11 o'clock at night because I'm in the annoying time zone of being in Australia. And I got clients in New York and London. And I just thought it just grew beyond my wildest expectations. And I just reevaluated and I thought this was not, fast forward to then. And I've got 3 children now. So I'm juggling 3 kids and calls at ungodly hours. And I just thought, this is not what I signed up for. And it took the love of traffic away from what I originally found. So I ended up selling half my agency and just bringing it back down to a normal level that was enjoyable. I could get the passion for traffic again. And then what I've discovered in my agency work was that most people actually didn't really need an agency. Like, sure, to a certain level of ad spend, yeah, by all means, you bring in an agency. But for most of the clients, like, they didn't actually really need me. Like, it wasn't that complicated to run. They just needed to be able to manage themselves a handful of really profitable campaigns. So I thought, I'm going to teach people how they can do it themselves. And it's like way more manageable from my time. I can still help these people. So then I launched Teach Traffic, but I kept half my agency because I felt like I couldn't ethically teach if I didn't still do. Plus, I still enjoy doing it. And so, yeah, so began the birth of Teach Traffic. And that has really become my baby, which is, as I said, helping business owners learn how to run traffic themselves so they don't need an agency, or at least they can get their campaigns to a point where they can bring in an agency because they've, as you mentioned, you tested their funnel and they know what works and they get it to that point. Because I felt like hiring an agency for small business was like kind of buying a Ferrari to go and buy your local milk. Like, you didn't need it.
Yeah, exactly. And also most small businesses can't afford to have somebody else help them with things like that, or they think they can, but then, like you said, that's not the best use of their money. They'd be better off learning how to do it.
Well, that's right. And then the money that they spend on the agency fees, they can either pour into buying more traffic and more ads or save that money. But yeah, so that's the difference.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how long have you been running the membership side of your business?
I think I initially started it, probably back in 2017, but it was really, really small. And I still had my full agency then because I just was starting small. And then it coincided actually with me picking up a teaching gig at Sydney University, actually.
As you do.
As you do. And I really enjoyed teaching people. And so what I found was, in running my agency and teaching, they were kind of like 2 full-time jobs in themselves. And it became even more untenable time-wise. And so that's when I decided to sell half my agency so that I could focus on doing one job properly, which was running Teach Traffic. And then at least my agency wasn't, because agency work is extremely time consuming, especially on client calls. And fair enough, like, clients deserve to know what's going on, not disputing that or anything. But I just felt like, so it started 2017, but it was, I'd say, managed poorly because I was trying to do both jobs. I didn't quite realize that they were both full-time jobs in themselves.
So talk a little bit about that transition from, you basically sold half of your agency. You started to focus quite a lot more on the membership side of things, the teaching side of things. Did you still continue teaching at Sydney University?
So I did for a long time. I used to run full-day workshops at Sydney Uni, actually. And I ran them for like 4 years, because I think I started in 2016. So I ran until COVID hit, basically. And then uni wanted me to come back when we were kind of like, they were just opening up. And one of my kids has really bad asthma. So I was quite worried about going back into these kinds of close contact kind of settings. So I said, look, I can't come back. And then, so they gave me an ultimatum, but whatever, it was fine. I did like 4 years teaching there, but that was kind of the impetus of the separation of it was due to COVID.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how life gives us these inflection points.
Yeah.
You come up and you've got to make a decision one way or the other. And it sounds like that was one of those. So,
and look, to be honest, I felt like I grew the uni a little bit. Like, well, also running a full day workshop, it was literally from 9 to 5. Like, I would get home and I was exhausted, like standing in front of a room teaching for 8 hours straight. Even at lunch break, I had people coming up to me asking me questions. And so I kind of felt like 4 years of doing that, I was a bit tired of it after a while. I just thought, oh my God, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. That bit's been well cooked.
But you know what? I'm really grateful for that experience, actually, because I really genuinely believe it made me a way better teacher. And if I think back to the first workshop that I gave those poor students in that class, because it was terrible. And it was a real lesson for me in how to teach, how to pace people through content, get feedback. And so if anything, I feel eternally grateful for that experience of teaching at uni, because my teaching style changed massively over the years. I would hope for the better. And I wouldn't have had that experience if it wasn't for the uni experience. So yeah, no, I'm stoked that I did it.
Yeah. And I reckon, because like I said, I've learned a lot from being in the Teach Traffic membership, which you've got a lot of pre-recorded modules in there. And I like the way that you've already thought about, well, this is how you do it. But by the way, here's some of the gotchas that can get you along the way. And most people wouldn't even think about them, which is very, very helpful. So as you then made that switch, and in terms of the membership, again, it has morphed over time. You mentioned that's morphed over time. And we've been chatting a little bit, and there's a bit more morphing that's going to be going on. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, look, I think, you and I were talking before we hit record, like about changes that one makes in their business. And I think that's our responsibility as a business owner, is to, you implement something and then you fulfill on that. And then one needs to look back and connect the dots and reflect on what worked and what hasn't worked and what's worked the best and how can I do more of that. So I have experimented a lot with Teach Traffic over the years. And in my experience, ultimately what I've found is and I think my sweet spot of my offering for people is the data side of things. Like, that's where people really, really struggle. And I get it. Like, it's not for everyone and people often get of numbers. So I totally appreciate that. So what I felt like probably the biggest change that I've implemented for Teach Traffic is something that I did in the beginning and then just found not viable, but I've reintroduced, is reviewing people's accounts for them. Because, like, for me to go into an ad account, it's like I've just done it so much. It's been 10 years now since I've been running traffic, which is like in dog years. And so I see things that people don't see just instantly, because purely from, it's like flexing a muscle. I've just done it so much and I feel like I've got an unfair advantage in that respect. And I just also know from my own experience of learning traffic, because I was a student in the beginning like everyone else. Like, as I said, like, I didn't know anything about marketing. I was in finance, I was in funds management, building attribution models and so I knew nothing. So you can watch a course and you can buy a course online and that all makes sense. And you go, oh, great, I get that. Got it. Go to implement it in your own account. And suddenly you go, well, but what about this? And what about that? And well, I don't understand what to do in this particular, how does it apply to me and my account? And that leap from watching a course to your own experience is a big leap for people. And I only know this from my own experience and talking to others and looking at other people's accounts. So to give that value to people, it's just something that I would have dreamed of when I was starting. I would have, especially starting my agency, where like I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd followed a course, but I didn't have the life experience and the confidence. So for someone to dive into my account for 5 or 10 minutes and go, right, Ilana, you've done this well, but you've made this mistake, change that, that'll have this effect, go, see ya. Then report back and tell me how you're going. And so yeah, like my ultimate goal for Teach Traffic is just to help people in the best possible way. And I think reviewing their accounts is really like one of the most beneficial ways. So that's one of the changes that I made.
Yeah. And I think that's a really powerful change, because it's the same for me with the quizzes that I look at. People talk to me about either a quiz they've got or a quiz they want to build. And it's just like, from all of those 10,000 hours of mastery, you can see things that other people wouldn't really realize. And I think that's so true. And just that ability to go in there and you don't often get that when you do courses.
No, I can't think of any other course out there that the course creator will give you their specific feedback. And I'm happy to do that, like, because I'm happy to come out from behind the curtain of my course material and go, I can really help you here.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking at it from the other perspective, from my perspective of going, Ilana and her team are helping me, it's just like such a relief to be able to know that somebody's looking at it who knows really, really what they're doing. I know a lot about funnels. I know a lot about online business because I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm new-ish to doing my own ads, if that makes any sense. So I've had other people do ads for me, but doing my own ads and learning how to do those in a way that lets me teach my people in my community how to start thinking about ads. It's just, you just don't know what you don't know. And it's complicated.
It is complicated, yeah, but it's not rocket science. You just need to know a handful of really, really powerful strategies just to get you started and build your confidence, and you just build from there. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make, and possibly a lot of other educators make, is they try and teach you everything, and you can do this. And admittedly, that was exactly the mistake that I made in my first couple of workshops at Sydney Uni. As I said, those poor students, I just downloaded on these people, like, you can do this and this. Doesn't mean you should, right? And so by, just being really strategic, and as I kind of like think like a sniper, start really small, get a couple of wins under your belt, and then build and grow from there, which was like the origin of that. You mentioned the challenge that you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly why I created a retargeting challenge for people, because my thought was, if I could just get them to create a really good retargeting campaign, that's it. Just start with that. Just start with trying to get the most out of your existing traffic, right? Get that working. Awesome. Then you add cold traffic on it. Don't start trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah, because I can tell you from hard experience that trying to do everything at once means you don't ever finish anything.
Absolutely. That's right.
It is an unfortunate truth, but I think that's really, really useful insights into just getting started with ads. I have a question for you about your agency. So you had a big, fairly chunky agency. Obviously, you've got a team working with you.
Yeah.
And these days, it's a smaller size. Just talk a little bit about the value that you get from the agency in terms of how it helps. You've talked a little bit about how it helps you with your teaching side of things, but do you have a focus on a specific kind of that you work with? Is it locked into that one specific kind of business?
It's not. No, my agency has morphed over the years as well. Like when I started, when any business starting out or an agency, you take any work that comes your way. So I took every type of business under the sun. And then I realized that I couldn't really help startup. That wasn't the best way that I could help people. I felt that my sweet spot for helping people in agency world was helping someone who had run traffic before, even if they had mild success, they'd had some success in that their funnel converts and their offer converts. But even if it was unprofitable, I could turn around an ad account. That's what I felt was like. I just needed data as a starting point. But if I had some data to start with and an offer that I knew mildly converts, then I could turn around an ad account. But I didn't focus on a specific industry. And then after a number of years, probably about, 6 years into my agency, I don't remember exactly, someone asked me a really interesting question. They said, if you were starting out your agency all over again, what would you do? And I'm like, well, that's easy. I would just focus on one vertical. And they're like, so why don't you do that now? And I'm like, well, that's a really good question. Why don't I do that now? So I did it. And I thought, well, what's an obvious niche that I would focus on? So I did dentists, because one of my first client accounts was a dental account. I still had them to that day. In fact, I still do have them 10 years later. And I just knew the industries really, really well. So I thought, I'm going to just focus on Google Ads for dentists. And hopefully you have no dentists listening to this episode, because they were a nightmare to deal with personally. And I ended up getting that part of my agency up to about, 10 or 12 dentists. But honestly, I just was tearing my hair out with these dentists. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. So I just went back to not choosing a vertical. And I still tell people to this day, if I was starting my agency, what would I do differently? And I would absolutely pick a vertical, but I wouldn't pick dentists. But I feel grateful that I never really stuck with that, because what it's given me for Teach Traffic is an amazing wealth of life experience of the different funnels and offers that work. And I think I've tested every possible niche and strategy under the sun. So that's been a tremendous amount of help for me to help people who come into Teach Traffic for all these weird and wonderful niches that are out there, because I've done some variation of it before and I know what works. And you see patterns, or you just see industries behave so differently. So I remember I had a client that was kind of in the dog space, and man, their ads converted like crazy. And I was like, what is going on? In like the stats that I would apply to, let's say, an online business just did not apply to this dog business. And I just thought, these dog people are passionate and spend anything. And so you get insights by dealing with different niches, which I always actually found really fun.
Well, you learn so much about what the niches are all about and who's doing what and things like that. It is really fascinating. I know that one of the things that's been really useful in Teach Traffic is that you did a training not that long ago about working with local traffic. So not necessarily going for the vertical, but just going for the kind of the type, the geographic region type of ads. And that's been very, very interesting.
And that course is literally like the framework that I rolled out for my Google Ads for dentists. Like that is it, the entire blueprint. Like you could just do that course and start an agency of Google Ads for dentists, because that's exactly what I did. The lesson though that I learned from that, which is what I would do differently if I were to do it again, and if anyone listening were to do this, my advice to you would be to follow that framework for traffic. Right? You got your traffic sorted. The problem that I found was that the websites that I was sending the traffic to were often terrible. And if I had my time again, I would build out my own websites that I would like lease, or I don't know how you manage it, but I would at least get a proper web designer that's going to build a mobile responsive site, because it's basically a mobile campaign, right? So a lot of these old websites were not mobile responsive, were just clunky. And that was a lot of the problem, was that we're sending great quality traffic to a terrible website. So I would own the funnel, which would be the way if I were to redo it, that was my lesson from that.
So you're basically saying that you would then use those funnels to sell leads back to whoever it is, the dentist.
You could do that model, or you could just essentially lease them the website, or you charge them a one-off fee to use that design. But the mistake that I made, as I said, was that we were sending really great traffic to a website that was just destined for failure and was never going to work. And you would just bring up the URL on your own mobile phone and you could barely see anything. Images wouldn't load, just like really, really basic stuff, right? So, and when I'd have a conversation with the dentist, it would be like, well, we've just spent all this money on a website. I don't want to spend anymore. And why do I need to? And so I would own the funnel, knowing what I know now and knowing how web design is a massive part of making paid traffic work. You need to do that, or at least deal with an industry that are receptive to experimental, because you can build landing pages for them, but these people didn't want it because it's blah, blah, blah. But yes, I don't know how we got onto this, but the local ads for business course was exactly that framework that I implemented for people.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a very useful one. I want to come back to something that I always knew, but it really got rammed home in my brain in doing the work that I've been doing as part of your membership. And that is that you have to be able to know through gathering data what's working and what's not in your ad campaigns, in your funnels and conversions and things like that. And so there's a lot of changes that have been happening in terms of the analytics side of things with Google Analytics and just how to track things. Have you got maybe a couple of tips in terms of how would somebody who's just starting to get into this space what would be the first thing that they should do in terms of getting their conversion tracking set up? Because you have to set up conversion tracking before you can even, well, you don't have to, but you'd be just throwing money out the window if you didn't. You have to be able to track your conversions before you start running your ads. So maybe just a couple of bits of wisdom about the whole conversion analytics data side of things.
Yeah. And I think this is a really big sticking point for people, actually, is they get stuck at this point. And so essentially, I guess one of the reasons online business and paid traffic has exploded over the last 10 years is because it's extremely trackable. You can track really anything that you pretty much want. The question is, what do you want to track? So that's probably the biggest struggle for people, is determining what's success for them. So for example, for a dentist, it would be somebody filling in the contact form, and it would be somebody picking up the phone and calling you. But, what about the people who go to the contact us page to look at where you are on the maps? Perhaps that's like a micro conversion. So you have this concept of micro versus macro conversions. So that would be the first tip I would give people, is to think about your business and think about what is success for your business. For an e-commerce business, it would be a purchase, but obviously it's unique to every business. So I personally like to just get a spreadsheet up, map out what my conversion events, what it is I'm desiring to track as success. And then you've got clarity around how many conversion events there are. And often for businesses, there are more than one. So for my business, it would be somebody filling in the contact form and signing up to Teach Traffic, but also somebody downloading a free guide. So somebody downloading some of my free guides would be a micro conversion, as well as contact form, but somebody purchasing Teach Traffic would be a macro conversion, just to give you an example. And then the next step would be to set up goals in your analytics for that, so that you can track those success events for all your traffic sources, not just your ads, because you want to be able to go into your analytics and look at your traffic sources and say, which is my best converting traffic source? Now, that's not perfect, because often direct traffic, which is just they don't know the traffic source, it would convert well. And that's somebody just typing it into your website, into the URL bar. But essentially, it's going to give you somewhat of an idea. But yes, you are right. If you are going to run ads, it's highly, highly recommended to set up conversion tracking in your ad account, so that when you log into your ad account, you will be able to see which campaign generated those success events, which keyword was the driver behind that. So I've had some people say to me, I don't need to set it up because I'm just going to be getting the leads into my business. Like, what's the point? Like, they're coming my way. Why you want to do it is so that you can reverse engineer in your ad account what's working, number one. Equally important, what's not working, so that you can stop doing that. And that's really the growth of internet business, is that you can redirect funds from what's not working towards more of what is, so that you can hopefully double down on the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because I think that's one of the more, I would call it it's not a secret. It's not hidden. It's just people don't think about it, about the fact that they might be spending money on stuff that's not working, but it's too difficult to try and figure out what's not working. So they just pay attention to what is.
Correct. Or they stuff it up somehow in that they set up conversion tracking for every page on their website, so that they think every page is a conversion event. And it's like, no, it's only your success pages or success events.
Yeah, for sure. Ilana, it's been so great having you here on the podcast. Thank you so much for just sharing your story and the things that you're doing to help owners like myself just get their funnels working and going and getting those ads going. If people were interested in learning more about you or reaching out to you or about Teach Traffic, where would they go?
Yeah, best place is just to go to teachtraffic.com, and they'll find all the information there.
Excellent. And I'll put the link to that in there, and the $10 retargeting challenge, because it was, like I said, for $10, it was one of the best courses I've ever done.
Oh, amazing.
I highly
Wow, great.
recommend it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.